Hello and welcome to Nana's Crafty Home. My name is Tanya. Today's tutorial is going to show you how to crochet these snowflakes that you can find as free patterns on my website, and they go to my Winter's Night Rhapsody blanket. I'm going to show you how to crochet the base in order to place your snowflakes in your project, as well as how to crochet each one of these two snowflakes that are in my blanket. Let's go ahead and get started. So to start out with, I have worked a couple of rows of double crochet. You don't have to use a base of double crochets for this stitch. I use the snowflake stitch in another pattern, and I use single crochet for that. You are just going to be basically using the same technique of that chain one, and so your base can be any stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, whatever you want. But because my Winter's Night Rhapsody blanket is using the double crochet stitch, I've gone ahead and worked a base of double crochet. So basically for the stitch, my snowflake is worked into a chain. So I'm going to be working double crochets for this row, but working a chain between my stitches. And so I'm going to start out here with the chain 3 at the beginning of my row, and that's going to count as my first stitch, and then work a double crochet in the next 5 stitches. Now you can work that chain anywhere in any sequence. I am working mine 12 stitches apart so that my snowflakes have enough space between them. So again, I'm going to be working a double crochet in the next 5 stitches. And then after that 5th double crochet, I'm going to chain 1. Then I'm going to double crochet in the next 12 stitches. So that chain, I did not skip between. So after I've worked that chain, I did not skip any stitches. I'm working a double crochet in every stitch of this row, but I'm working a chain where I want to work my snowflake. Now, it may be easier for you to keep track of that chain stitch if you put in a stitch marker. That's not 100% necessary if you can keep track of that chain stitch, but you might find at first it's easier to keep track of if you mark it with a stitch marker. But go ahead and double crochet in the next 12 stitches. So there's 3, there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Chain 1 again, double crochet in the next 12. So 1, 2, 11, 12, chain 1, double crochet in the next 12. I'm not skipping any stitches. So there's 2, 11, and 12. So then chain 1, double crochet in the remaining stitches of your row. So we're going to turn and work another row of double crochets. So I'm going to chain 3, and for this row I am going to just be working a double crochet in the top of every double crochet stitch from the previous row. I'm going to skip over those chains that I made between double crochet stitches. So when I get to a space where I've worked a chain, I'm going to work in the double crochet before the chain and the double crochet after the chain, skipping over that chain space without skipping any stitches. And so you could, like I said, you could place a stitch marker there so you can keep track of it, but we're going to be working our snowflakes into that chain space for our next step here. So just work a double crochet in the top of every double crochet stitch from the previous row, skipping over those chain ones that we made from that previous row. So I have finished my double crochet base, and you can see that you can tell where those chain ones are. They are visible. I've skipped over them with my double crochet stitches, and now I'm going to be making my first snowflake. You may find having a stitch marker at this point helpful for you. You may already have them marked with stitch markers, but we're going to be working into this chain, and it gets a little tight because of how many stitches I'm going to be working into that chain, and sometimes it's helpful if I just keep a stitch marker in there to keep track of my loops. So I have my white on my hook here, and I'm going to insert my hook into the back 2 loops of any chain 1 from that row. So you can see the chain, you can see the top 2 loops here, and I'm going to insert my hook catching 2 loops. So there's 1 loop in the front here. And this is where it might be helpful for you, because that 1 loop, it's going to get tight. So to just keep track of it, you could put a stitch marker in there. So I've inserted my hook into that chain, and I'm going to keep my hook on the front side of my work here. And I'm going to slip stitch to join my white into that chain, and then chain 1. I'm going to work 1 single crochet, chain 3 3 times in those same 2 loops. So inserting my hook, catching those 2 loops, single crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, 3 times. So that's once, inserting my hook back into that same stitch, single crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. Then I'm going to do it one more time, inserting my hook into that stitch, single crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. So now I'm going to rotate my work slightly because I want to work the rest of that row 1 into the front loops. So I've marked that front loop. You can see that front loop right there. So I'm going to be inserting my hook under that 1 loop and repeating single crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, 3 times. Now remove that stitch marker if you want to get that out of the way. In that same stitch, single crochet, chain 3, single crochet, chain 3, in that same stitch. So then when I've done that, I can slip stitch to my first stitch. So that first single crochet that I made, I'm going to slip stitch. And I'm ready to move on to round 2 of my snowflake. Slip stitch into that chain 3 space. So that first chain 3 space, slip stitch. Chain 1, work 2 single crochets, chain 4 and 2 single crochets in every chain 3 space around. So single crochet in that chain 3 space, single crochet again. So I've worked 2 single crochets, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 2 more single crochets in that same chain 3 space. And I'm going to repeat that all the way around. So in that next chain 3 space, insert your hook and 2 single crochets, chain 4, 2 single crochets. The next chain 3, 2 single crochets, chain 4, and 2 single crochets. Again, 2 single crochets, chain 4, 2 single crochets, next chain 3 space, 2 single crochets, chain 4, and 2 single crochets worked in that same chain 3 space. I have one more chain space, 2 single crochets, chain 4, and 2 single crochets worked in that same space. And then when I've completed working in each of my chain 3s, I'm going to slip stitch again to my first stitch. Then you're ready to fasten off. You leave a little bit of a longer tail here when you fasten off, and you can use that longer tail to tack down your snowflake. And then that first tail there, I like to tighten that first round. Because we're working in that chain, that first round can look a little sloppy and loose. And so I like to just take that first tail from when I joined my white and just tighten up that first round. So I just run that first one around all 6 single crochets from the beginning on the back side of my snowflake, and I just tighten it up. So I pull that nice and tight before I weave that end in. And you see how that tightened that round up nicely at the beginning, and I don't have any more gaps. It looks a lot nicer after I've done that. And then you can just tack it down with this other end. So that is your first snowflake. And now I'm going to show you snowflake number 2. Okay, so this is snowflake number 2 in the blanket. And you can see here I have another chain space, and I've got my white on my hook here, and I'm just going to start the same way by inserting my hook into that chain, picking up those back 2 loops, leaving that front loop, and you can go ahead and mark that front loop if you wish with your stitch marker. And slip stitch join your new color. So for round 1, I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to work 3 single crochets in that same place. So in those back 2 loops of that chain, there's 1, 2, and 3 single crochets. Go ahead and rotate your work slightly. We're going to be working under that front loop. So inserting your hook under that front loop, work 3 single crochets in that front loop. And you can remove that stitch marker. So there's 1, 2, and 3. We're not going to slip stitch join at the end. We're going to work a mini popcorn, chain 4, and a slip stitch in the 4th chain from the hook, then chain 3 in every stitch that I just worked from round 1. So a mini popcorn is going to be 3 single crochet stitches in the same stitch. So in that first single crochet from the beginning of that first round, work 3 single crochets. And if you want, you can place a stitch marker in that first single crochet, but 3 single crochets all worked in the same stitch. So there's 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to drop that loop that I have on my hook, and I'm going to insert my hook into the first stitch that I made. So in that first single crochet, insert your hook into the top of that first single crochet, place that dropped loop back on your hook, and pull through your stitch to create a tiny little popcorn. Then chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, slip stitch into the 4th chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that first chain that I made, slip stitch, creating a picot. Then chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and repeat those steps. So in the next stitch, work a mini popcorn. 3 single crochets worked in the same stitch. Again, if you need to, you can place a stitch marker into that first single crochet. There's 2, and there's 3. Drop your loop, insert in that first single crochet, put that loop back on your hook and pull through, chain 4, slip stitch into that first chain, chain 3, and repeat. Mini popcorn in the next. Chain 4, slip stitch into the 4th chain, and chain 3. And just continue repeating that in every stitch around. So after you've worked a mini popcorn, your chain 4, slip stitch, and then chain 3 in your last stitch. After that chain 3, you're going to slip stitch into your first stitch. To complete your snowflake. And again, you're going to leave a little bit of a longer tail so you can tack down your snowflake. And you're going to do the same thing with this snowflake with your first end. Just tighten that beginning. It won't be as floppy as your first snowflake because we worked 3 single crochets and then 3 single crochets all together in that same chain without working chains between them. So it is a little, naturally just a little bit tighter for that first round, but I still prefer to go ahead and just tighten it up slightly. So I would just repeat that, and then you can use your longer end to tack down your snowflake. Now to tack down a snowflake, you would just get your long end on your needle, and you'd want to get to the back of your snowflake. And what you're going to do is very simple. You're going to have your needle here, and you're going to want to pick up stitches from your blanket base. I don't want to go all the way through to the back side of my blanket because that's going to make the back side of my blanket look messy and unprofessional. So I'm going to keep all of these stitches on the front side of my blanket underneath my snowflake, so these stitches, while I'm tacking it, are invisible. So my end is over here on the back side of my snowflake. This is my short end. I haven't tucked in yet. I'm just going to get that out of the way. Just go ahead and come back down to the front side of your blanket and just pick up some stitches. So just run your needle underneath those stitches. Tighten gently. And you can see it pulled that snowflake down to the edge there on the top of the blanket. And then just come back up to your snowflake, grab a couple of stitches from the back side of your snowflake again. I'm not going to be going all the way up into my snowflake. I want these stitches to be invisible. So just come up, grab some stitches in the back side there, pull gently, and then go back down to your blanket. Make sure that your stitches are running underneath your snowflake. So come down here, pick up a stitch or two, gently pull, and just continue repeating that all the way around the outside edge of your snowflake. And that is going to keep your snowflake from curling as much. It's going to tighten that snowflake down a little bit to the top edge of your blanket and just give it a little bit more security on your project. And that's all there is to it. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial today. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you never miss a new video. Thanks everyone. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.